I'd like to talk to you today about the Philip Zimbardo Stanford Prison Study. The Stanford Prison Study is also, along with the Milgram Study, probably one of the worst ethical studies ever performed. I don't remember exactly what the original premise was. Why did he want to see what a prison environment would look like with college students? But regardless, that is what happened. They made a realistic prison with barred doors in the basement of one of the buildings. The guards that they randomly picked out of the student body got to go home at night. They were dressed in uniforms and they had mirrored glasses on their faces. And although they had nightsticks, they were not allowed to hurt any of the, like, you couldn't be, as a guard, you could not beat a student, but they could, a quote-unquote prisoner, but they could intimidate, they could harass, they could do all kinds of other things. You might think within the first 10 or 15 minutes, you're a student, you have volunteered for this, it's just all make-believe. And I don't think anything really happened in the first few hours. But one of the guards had watched the movie Cool Hand Luke, and he really thought that this particular assignment, this experiment, was pretty boring, and he decided on his own to start being a really aggressive guard. Now, you would think in normal circumstances that if one person starts being cruel or being abusive, that other people, whether there were other guards, quote-unquote guards, or other prisoners, would say, hey, quit that, and they would stop. But in fact, that's not what happened. Much like kind of the Milgram study, is that other guards started to also be bossy and belligerent. So almost right away, the prisoners started to, the quote-unquote prisoners, the students who were playing prisoners, revolted. They're like, we're not going to take this, you can't do this to us, blah, 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 blah. And then, in order to get back at the uncooperative other group, the group who were guards started waking them up in the middle of the night. They eventually took away, they didn't have hardly any clothes, but they made them almost nude. And that they took away, I think, their bed sheets and something else. So basically took away a lot of the things the prisoners had. It got so bad that a couple of the students who were playing prisoners went to go see Philip Zimbardo, and they said, look, this is out of control. I'm losing it. I can't handle this. Well, in a normal experiment, we'll talk about single blind and double blind at some other point, but at some point, Zimbardo decided, instead of being a detached observer, that he would make himself the warden of the prison. And when the students went in and said, look, you got to let us go, which is one of the ethical guidelines, you have the right to leave at any time, that he just told them, no, you guys are being weak, that you can't. Basically, come and see me tomorrow, more or less, and maybe we'll think about it. Well, so students were under the impression, correctly, that they could just up and leave. When told no, they went back and told the other students who were playing prisoners, they won't let us go. Which then, by word of mouth, kind of made other students feel like this really is a prison. Now let me back up a little bit. This study was supposed to go on, if I remember correctly, for about a month. Imagine that you went into this thing telling other people, yeah, I'll be back in a month. You want to leave, and now you've been told no. Who's coming to get you? Nobody, right? You can't call out. You can't call your parents. You can't call a lawyer. You can't call your other friends because they all know you're going to be gone for a month. You can imagine how that made the students who were playing prisoners feel. Well, that accentuated the environment the guards got more aggressive, but now knowing, or thinking anyway, that this is a real prison and you can't leave, the prisoners became more submissive. That is, both groups started to more conform to the role that they thought they were playing. Not that Zimbardo told them to play, but that they had created for themselves. I'm a prisoner, apparently I must have to be submissive, and the guards apparently thinking quite the opposite. So, it was supposed to go on for a month. How long did it really go on? If I remember correctly, I think they only got to 3 or 4 days before it got so bad that they had to stop it. The odd thing is, Zimbardo, although he's the one who ultimately did stop it, he had to be convinced by another faculty member who came in. Again, please remember the Milgram study is, well, I was just doing what I was told. In Zimbardo's case, he really wanted to see the thing to the end. And he felt justified in doing that. And if things started to go a little off the rails, he was willing to go with that. But another faculty member came in and basically told him, as I understand the story is, you're going to get sued. The university is going to get sued, and you'll lose your job and maybe go to jail. And I'm sure that was quite an impetus for him to want to stop. But the Stanford prison study, why do people do bad things? It probably has a lot to do with the situation. I've read a bunch of true crime novels, and one of the things that happens in serial killer cases is a killer kills someone, is questioned by the police, and then is then released. Or the police never show up, and they feel like, hey, I must be pretty good at this. And then they do it again, and they get a bigger thrill out of the second murder than they did the first time. Well, actually, that's not quite true, because they're escalating the whole time. It's getting worse and worse and worse. But if we switch from that to, say, drunk driving, why do people continue to drunk drive? Well, they've done it a bunch of times, and they've gotten away with it. Nobody said, hey, you shouldn't do that. Nobody said, hey, this is dangerous. Or they haven't had an accident yet. So, that's why they continue. So